Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here today. It's been very enjoyable to see all these different projects and activities going on. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background on me, just so you understand how that kind of ties into this project. I'm president of a company right now, Act Services, but my background is in outdoor and therapeutic recreation, and used to do a number of things like adaptive recreational programs. I mentioned to someone I was actually a coach for a blind baseball team that had a beeper ball in that. Special Olympics, things like that. Also worked at Brookfield Zoo and also adapted a lot of education programs there. But one of the things I got very involved in was universal design at Brookfield Zoo, and we were very fortunate. We won an award for universal design exemplars on a CD just because of our work of that, using that in exhibits. And then also worked at LCM Architects, so I got a chance to kind of see the accessibility side from an architectural standpoint. One of the things involved in this project is that there are standards already out there related to the Americans with Disabilities Act in the United States. So we actually have the standards that were signed back in 1990, but they've been revised as of 2010 that also include recreational areas as well. And one of the ones I just kind of highlighted here was play areas, which is playgrounds. So we kind of use that as a base for what we needed to do from an accessibility standpoint, but also increase that from the universal design standpoint. This particular project was actually what made it unique is that every park district or park department, whenever they build something, they have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a minimum standard. In this particular case, what it was is this is a grant that this park got a grant from the Kellogg Foundation that required the park to incorporate universal design into the park structure and the park design. So already it needed to go above and beyond the ADA requirements. So that was something that was very unique. So the original money would have come out of the taxpayer money for paying for the project. This provided an additional almost $500,000 in order to incorporate universal design and give it above and beyond accessibility standards. So how I kind of broke out my paper, and also I'll do in this presentation here, is the different elements and try to highlight and show you some of the differences related to what's required under the ADA, but how we try to increase that from a universal design standpoint. So we do have accessible parking. There's a parking place at the parking lot at the park that provides the accessible parking spaces. This is right near the entrance where everybody would go into the park. What we did in this particular location here was provide an extra wide access aisle to allow people who had ramps or a larger lift for getting out of their vehicle to be able to have enough space to be able to get out of that and be able to put it back in and then go on to the sidewalk area. So it was a very inclusive design from the get-go. And also a low physical effort for being able to do that. There was an entrance on the north side where the parking was, and then on the east side, which is where the other entrance into the park from the sidewalk area. The intent here was that all the walkway areas were going to be at a 5% slope or less. The ADA does allow slopes to be from 5% to 8%. They would call those a ramp. But what they found in some of the studies that have been done by the Access Board that actually has developed the standards for the ADA is that up to 12% of people that have a mobility device or balance issues or use a wheelchair cannot even do that type of slope. That's too steep for them. So that's why we intentionally try to make sure that our slopes were 5% or less throughout the whole park from the entrance and getting to each one of the facilities or elements within the park. One of the standards that is provided under the ADA for a playground for getting access up to the top layers or upper level areas, one is called a transfer platform and then also a ramp system. The transfer platform, a child actually has to move out of their wheelchair and bump up the stairs to get up to that upper level of the play area. Maybe there's a slide that they want to go up to and then slide down. The problem is then once they're out of their wheelchair, it's very, very difficult. It's a lot of effort to get up, and then you're coming down, and then they still have to get themselves back over to that wheelchair. So it's something that's very difficult, a lot of energy, and most kids don't want to do it. They've already found that probably 1 or 2 50% of kids will actually do that. Most of them don't want to get out of their wheelchair. Now, the other one is providing a ramping system at least to one side of the playground. And so it allows you to get up to those areas, but not to all the elements that are up there. And then the person has to turn around and come back out as well. Only to 50%. So one of our goals was, we were thinking that we would try to make it accessible to 100% of the elevated play areas. So one of the things that we did here is we actually developed a ramping system that went all the way through the upper level of the playground to the other side. And I'll just kind of show you here with the pointer. So here's the ramp going all the way through and all the way to the other side. One of the things that we liked about that design was that it really allowed kids to be able to stay together with their friends who might not be using a wheelchair, and they could be able to go all to the different elements up in that upper level of the playground. One of the things that was kind of interesting, part of the grant we had to have an advisory group of kids and adults with disabilities, or parents with a child with a disability, or also like we had special ed teachers or professionals in the field. One of the things that the parents and even some of the kids said, we want to be challenged a little bit. We don't want to have everything flat. So we're like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. So one of the things we created was an upper level area that a child had to actually transfer off their wheelchair and actually had to use the steps to get all the way to this upper, almost like a viewing area of the park. And that was something that a lot of the kids and the parents said as well, this is great, this is what we were looking for. So it was a bigger challenge. One of the comments from the other parents is, how can our kids who can't get up there still kind of be engaged or be involved? Well, we talked to the manufacturer, and he actually came up with a great idea from our discussions in that, was the creation of a periscope. So a child who's at this lower area here, right here, they can look in here and they actually have a periscope, and they can see the kids who are up at the upper level of this area. And so they could still interact. This the flooring right here for this upper level is kind of a mesh, so they can still call up to each other and still have ability to still interact with the kids, even though they're in this upper area that they're not going to be able to go to. One of the other things that we put down at the playground here was a unitary surface, a rubberized type of surface. Under the ADA, they have what's called an engineered wood fiber. That is considered an accessible material, but it's like a wood that people, after they kick it around a while, it's inaccessible very quickly. So this is a rubberized surface, very even surface throughout the whole playground area. And it makes it very easy for somebody using a wheelchair to be able to get around to the different elements at the playground. One of the other things that in our discussions with the advisory group was creating some different levels even on this ground here. So you can see we created almost like moguls that you would for skiing. And so with these moguls, the other thing we provided was different colorations to the heights. So as you get higher, you can see green, blue, yellow, and red. And we included the yellow and red from our discussions with parents who had kids with autism or maybe cognitive disabilities, because they understand that yellow and red, kind of like a stoplight, is something that they can recognize. It's higher, it could be a little more dangerous or a little harder to do. So at least gave them something visually to look at and know if they wanted to challenge themselves to be able to do something like that. The other thing we did try to do was create some areas, kind of spacing, a little bit of spacing in between some of the moguls that actually a wheelchair could fit through. And we provided a couple of different heights of that as well. Again, trying to challenge, especially the feedback that we got from some of the parents, not to make everything flat, but let's try to get at some things that could be a little bit more challenging for some of their kids. One of the other things, as I talked about, was the walkway that goes through all the park was very low slope, running slope in that, so it made it very easy to get around. The other thing we tried to do is to make sure that there was a wide area for someone to be able to move off the sidewalk onto the playground surface or onto the swing surface. And this kind of shows right in between that area, so it's a very smooth transition. In the standards under the ADA, all you needed would be a curb ramp to get down to that play surface. So we tried to make something that was more inclusive design. So any multiple ways that you could get into that playground area by any of the kids that wanted to use it. And this is just kind of looking from the playground through the walkway and then over to the swing area as well. Just kind of showing that one of the entrances for getting into this lower part of the playground surface. And then that smooth transition, as it is just like with the playground, onto the swing area as well. One of the things that we included in the swing area is a couple of swings that are designed for a child with a disability. What they do is provide an extra support, especially if they have a weaker back or in particular maybe a weaker neck, that they can sit in this and still be able to swing, and it's something that can get harnessed in, so it's something that's a little bit more of a safety feature for them to be able to enjoy that swing. One of the other areas that got developed was a raised garden area and a water fountain feature as well. So right at the very end here, this is kind of the source of the water fountain that would kind of bubble up water, and then it would go down a trough going all the way down to the end of the water feature and garden area. One of the things that we did get some feedback from parents who had children with autism was that their kids loved to put their hands in moving water, and they really enjoyed that. One of the other things they said is if you could put something kind of in the imprint of the cement when it's wet, that they would love to put their hand in the water and also touch those things. So we just took leaves from the area and pressed that into the concrete while it was wet, so that they had the ability to touch that as well as having the water going over their hand. And from a sensory standpoint, that was something very acceptable to them. At the end of the water feature there are 3 statues. We have a frog, a turtle, and a fish, and there's different ways to activate it, and we created 3 different levels. This particular one is one that's activated by stepping on it, or if somebody rolled their wheelchair over it. We have one that has just a side panel that somebody can touch, and then one that's up on top of the ledge. So if somebody wanted to sit on the ledge or maybe stay in their wheelchair to be able to touch that, what this did is that once you touch it, it squirted some water into a bowl right at the very end. So it's different opportunities for anybody at a different ability to be able to activate and still kind of participate in this particular fountain. The garden itself was actually designed with a raised garden bed, so somebody using a wheelchair would be able to participate in a horticultural program. And we actually have young adults who are part of a program that actually take care of this. They all are part of a program with kids with developmental disabilities. We also have a picnic table area that provided a couple different opportunities for picnic tables that have a wheelchair access, but provided one in the sun and one also in the shaded area, especially if someone had maybe the sun was too strong, or maybe had medication that the sun could affect them. One last thing that we did design from the parents with children with autism was some of their kids would run. And there was right along the park was a street that was a little bit busier. So we created a berm area. So visually, you can actually see that there's a barrier there. We planted shrubs just kind of right along here. This is an entrance here. But there also is some fencing in there. So it really would contain a child and keep them from running out into the street. So it really gave an area, a very specific area for the children to stay into. So again, it really took a team in order to make this project possible. The Kellogg Foundation with their money, the DuPage Community Foundation, which is the money was funneled through that foundation. The Woodridge Park District, the people at the Park District were very embracing of this idea. And the Hitchcock Design Group, which was the overall landscape architects that worked on this project. And then I provided an overview, just because of my background with universal design, to make sure that we went above and beyond the accessibility codes. One of the things I always like to use this picture, this is the day of the grand opening of the park. And what it was is a father came with his daughter. His daughter is 12 years old, has very severe cerebral palsy, and she cannot get out of her wheelchair at all. Kind of weaker upper body as well. And one of the comments he said, she's 12 years old, he said, this is the first time I've ever been able to play with my daughter on a playground before. And so this is a picture I always like to use related to this project, because that to me, the very first day of the park being open. That's the thing that we got a chance to see. And so that was very exciting. But I also think about this as related to, it could be a parent with a disability, it could be a grandparent with a disability that want to play with their children or with their grandkids. So it's not only the child as we think about related to that accessibility, it was also related to this ability for interaction between a parent and a child. And then that's me. So I think I am open for questions.
Any questions?
Sure, go on.
Okay, one there.
By the way, great job.
Where is it exactly located?
It's in Woodridge, Illinois. So it's in a suburb of Chicago, probably about 20 miles outside of Chicago, kind of, I would say, southwest of the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's okay.
maybe you should make a little noise as well to catch my attention. So we start here. I saw one down there as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. I have a question about the materials you used for the playground, because in Illinois you have a climate that can be very harsh both in the summer and winter. Was that a challenge?
Not really. Actually, this is a large company, a playground company called Landscape Structures, and they're a common one all over the country. So there's probably three main ones. I would say they're one of the three main ones that provide playground equipment. But they were so accommodating in kind of creation of that periscope in something that they said, we like to be creative. This is something we don't have. So as we talked about it, that's something that they came up with and were able to design for us. So it's a unique design just specific to the playground.
Has the park been replicated any way in Illinois or inspired other parks?
Great question. And actually, it's parts of it have been. One of the things that's very interesting, there's an organization called National Recreation and Park Association, kind of for the United States, and they actually featured this park in an article. And I know the staff there in Woodridge, the park district, have actually done lots of tours for people, taking them through, and different landscape architects or different park district managers in order to see what they've done. And I don't know specifically how many parks might have been used this, but I know there's been generated a lot of interest from people.
Any more questions?
Oh, it looks like somebody all the way in the
Oh,
back.
down there.
Hello.
Hello.
I was just wondering if you and your team had any discussions on the use of handrails for the ramps.
We were trying to avoid that specifically. From a code standpoint, we were trying to make it so gentle that we didn't have to have
Right.
ramps. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Just because I know when the ramp is not steep, not very steep, handrails aren't really necessary, but sometimes the presence of handrails allows people to know that there's going to be a change in, that there's going to be like a slope or, yeah.
yeah. No, obviously on the actual playground itself, we had to include handrails on it, but we were trying to not
Yeah.
avoid doing that on the walkway areas.
Right.
Yeah.
But playground is very nicely designed.
Yeah, thank you. We were very proud of that one.
I just wonder about the cost for the park, because sometimes there is an issue and you say it costs much more to build accessible or in a universal design. Was there a discussion, or was there any, how was the cost for the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things related to the ADA. It's an unfunded mandate. So no matter if you're a state or local government, you have to follow the code. So you have to kind of build in that cost into whatever you're building. So the park district already had money set aside for the park itself and whatever minimum accessibility things that they had to do from the ADA part of it. But with this additional money from the foundation, that's where we could put like the additional ramping going through the playground. That's a very expensive addition. The rubberized surface alone was $100,000 just for the playground and the swing area. So that could be, if it was that engineered wood fiber, it would have been probably about $5,000. So with this additional money, it definitely allowed the ability to have more accessibility.
Thank you. I think I'll take the opportunity to ask one question myself.
Sure.
I thought I heard a lot about mobility impairments and different types of cognitive impairments, visual impairments.
Yeah, yeah. If I had a lot more time, I usually give this talk. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes. But we actually did put up some different things related to Braille signage, also notifications on that related to the plants. They were textured ones with Braille labels. There's also the coloration. We've kind of learned, again, some of the feedback we got from some of the parents who had kids with low vision. As long as there was that change of coloration on the moguls, that was going to be something that was going to help them as they kind of traverse the playground surface as well.
I just wondered because there was very little. If you walk with a cane, you would want sort of a barrier or something that you could use for guidance. And it seemed that everything was very smooth, so there was really no guiding sort of.
Well, actually what we found from them was that the different texture of the material of the sidewalk, which was concrete, and the rubber surface was enough difference for them to realize that they were coming up to a new area.
Okay.
So.
More questions?
Oh, got some.
Down there. We have time. There is soon coffee, but not quite.
If anybody's hungry.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. In Sweden, we have a discussion between creativity and playgrounds and safety. Is that the same discussion in the States, and how have you solved this?
Yeah, very much so, especially that surface in particular. The engineered wood fiber that I talked about, they talk about fall zones where a child, if they fell off the equipment, there's supposed to be a certain amount of compaction that happens. One of the things that's nice about the rubberized surface is that it's quite thick, and it makes it much easier for a child not to get hurt from a higher height. So that's they call it an ASTM standard related to safety. So there's certain aspects of that, the handrails on the railing on the playground itself. Those are all different things that have to be incorporated into the design, both the safety aspect and its usability. Yeah.
Okay, so I see that it's 25 past, but maybe we can do a very, no?
Nope.
Oh, it's okay. So more the rest of the questions we will have in the coffee break.
Okay, sounds good.
And thank you again, and thank all the presenters for very nice talks.
Thank you.